Mhm. Well, welcome everyone. I am Dr. Janice Lindstrom. I'm a board certified music therapist and I teach in Meadows. I teach music therapy majors, primarily sophomores and junior music therapy majors. And I teach the clinical methods courses and the accompanying practicum as a clinical experience that we provide for our students. And I don't know about your experiences in the classroom, but my students have been especially stressed. It seems like every year the stress level of the students and the anxiety gets really high, and it seems higher than the year before. I sort of feel like that's just because that's the present moment, and so it feels more intense in the present moment, but it also feels like just the level is just ramping up every year. And so I feel a little bit of a hypocrite talking about resilience and stress management when my personal stress management is really I'm being challenged to manage a lot of stress personally at this particular time in my life. And so I am scattered and my students are scattered. And so I've been starting off classes by asking people to listen to some music and do some sort of centering technique, which I am able to tell you something, give you an idea of what to do. But if you have your own way of kind of being present and centering yourself, then I'd love for you to do that. If you need a suggestion, box breathing is an easy thing to do. And so you're just thinking of a box where you first, I always like to start with the exhale. So you exhale, hold, inhale, hold, exhale. You just go around the box. Okay, so it's like you can think of a count of four. So you exhale for a count of four, hold for a count of four, inhale for a count of four, hold for a count of four, something like that. Okay, so that's box breathing. And we're just going to do that while we listen to a short song. Or you can engage in whatever practice is best for you. Maybe. This doesn't seem like it's working. There we go. Can you hear that on screen?
Down too fast. You got to make your morning last. Just getting down on the cobblestones. Look at the fun, feeling groovy. Hello now, folks. What you know, I'm about to watch your flowers growing. Ain't you got no rhymes for me? Do it, do it, feel pretty. I don't know. No deeds to do, no promises to keep. I'm dappled and drowsy and ready to sleep. Let the morning time drop all its petals on me. Life, I love you, all its greenery.
Okay, thank you. So I hope I feel more present in this room and less scattered in my head. So hopefully you are all feeling the same way. So, what sucks about resilience is that first, in order to be resilient, you have to experience adversity. So, some sort of stressful or traumatic experience has to occur. And then there has to be some evidence of some healthy functioning after the adversity. And then the final element of resilience is the mechanisms by which this usual distress is avoided or recovered from. So we have to experience something terrible. We have to survive in the best way we can. And then we have to recover and do things that help us to prevent that terrible thing from happening again. That's how we are resilient. And it turns out it is essential for survival as a human species, as human beings. It's essential for our survival because we're not going to escape adverse events. But it's also terrible to have to experience these adverse events so that we can recover and be resilient, right? And so resilience seems to be kind of a buzzword that I've been hearing a lot of, and I think we need to recognize that in order to be resilient, it means that we are going through challenging things, adverse events that we have to recover from and then protect ourselves from and be able to try to do things, take measures to prevent them from reoccurring. So there are three domains that one researcher who has been developing, well, it's probably a team of researchers, but they've been developing a concept called the adversity resilience portfolio. So the resilience portfolio model organizes strengths into three functional domains: self-regulation, interpersonal strengths, and meaning making. So regulation, self-regulation means, I've lost my mouse. There it is. Okay. Self-regulation means that we're fostering the capacity to control impulses, manage difficult emotions, and persevere in the face of setbacks. Interpersonal relationships are friends and families and our personal qualities that sustain those relationships. So those are the strengths that we draw from in the interpersonal relationship area. And then the meaning making represents our ability to explain and understand our experiences. And oftentimes we do this, many humans do this through um, religion or spirituality, but there's also secular ways to find and make meaning too. And so, and then one aspect that is also important for resilience, that is like just emerging as a research area, is culture and context. And in the resilience portfolio model, culture and context are represented by constructs like community support in the interpersonal domain. And so to teach resilience, you can foster a growth mindset, encourage problem solving skills, teach emotional intelligence, promote mindfulness practices, build supportive relationships, celebrate effort, and empower individuals to face challenges by viewing setbacks as learning opportunities. So essentially, you help people understand and manage their emotions and develop coping mechanisms and believe in their ability to overcome obstacles. Um, which I think we all understand that, but how do we do that in a classroom where my job is to teach? Well, it feels a little easier in my job to teach people how to be therapists, but I can imagine as part of becoming a therapist, you also have to take classes in history and math and language. And how do you teach all of the things that are needed for all of those subjects and also help these people develop into human beings, which I sort of feel like you should already be fully developed before you get to college, right? as a human, like that's not how that works. Our brains aren't even fully developed by the time we get to college. We know this, but and I'm what 52. I don't feel fully developed. Still emerging as a human. so so it's an unrealistic expectation. But then how do we teach the content in our areas and manage all of these other things that are needed, that our students need, that we need? Plus, how do we do that when we're experiencing stress and adverse experiences ourselves? So, um, this is these are the keys to teaching resilience, and I feel like we all know what they mean. Are there any of these that you would like clarification on, or are they all fairly self-explanatory? I'm not sure why it's blinking.
My lecture hall's been doing that
Oh.
all semester.
Okay,
Electrons will do well.
okay. So are there any of these that you have questions about or that I need to clarify?
But it's, you hear a lot about mindfulness. Not read it, I'd like to hear sort of your version of what mindfulness is all about.
So mindfulness techniques are ways that we stay present and help us to manage stress in um, challenging situations. And because uh, a lot of times we tend to, because of the way that our brains work, and it's too hard to put all of the things together, right? We don't think of ourselves as whole. We go to physical therapists to work on physical problems. We go to psychologists to work on mental health issues. We go to a doctor to work on medical issues. Turns out that we can't separate the medical issues, the physical issues, and the emotional and mental health issues. They're all part of us all the time, no matter what our problem is. But it's really hard for us to talk about anything without categorizing it and kind of putting them in boxes. And so, what I do, one of my coping strategies is to compartmentalize, right? So, I'm going to compartmentalize my home disasters and put them aside so that I can function here in this room, because this is what I'm doing right now. And um, I am open with my students about that. I tell them, I said, okay, I have a lot of stuff going on at home, and they know this because I've been called out of, I've had to leave class to go pick up my son from school, who's having a lot of challenges. And so they know that this is going on. And so I just let them know that, we're all safe, everything's fine. I mean, it's not fine, but um, that is all still going on, but it's not here. And so I'm putting that aside so that I can focus on this, because right now my obligation is to you, my students, right? And so I do that breathing at the beginning of class with that 1 minute and 43-second song that goes a little bit too fast. Even though it sings about slowing down, you move too fast. The tempo of that song it's pretty speedy. Um, and so I also play it live for my students and slow it way down so that we can bring our heart rates down and all. But the 1 minute and 43 seconds that song takes, it's light. It's a light sounding song that has light melody and lighter topics. So it's not too heavy, and it's very time limited. So it doesn't take too much time to sit and breathe. It doesn't feel like I'm going to be doing this for an eternity. And I can focus on that song and my breath for 1 minute and 43 seconds. And when I do that, I know that I feel better. I feel more able to be here and focus on what I'm doing now and less distracted by the other things. And so that's really what the mindfulness practice is about. It's about acknowledging where you are, bringing your brain and mind back into your body, because it turns out our mind and our body are not separate things. They are all part of us, contained here, and we can't focus on one without affecting the other. And if we improve one, we are also improving the other. That's why that whole exercise and get enough sleep and eat right is, that's all for our body. It also helps our mental health because they're all connected. They're the same. Our brain and our body, our mind and our body are the same. Yeah, okay, and we can't separate those out, but we do that when we talk about them. And so it's about coming back into your body and being able to feel grounded in this moment instead of worried about the next moment or ruminating about the past moment. So that's what, and mindfulness practices tend to be things like breathing, because that's the easiest way to bring us into this moment. I have a unscientifically tested hypothesis that the diaphragm, which is a muscle that goes across your body here, and it pushes your organs out of the way so that your lungs have room to expand, and then relaxes as you exhale. I think that the diaphragm is directly connected to our parasympathetic nervous system, which is our it's not something that we consciously control. It's an autonomic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system is the rest and digest, whereas the sympathetic nervous system is the fight and flight one. And I think the diaphragm, when it contracts because it's pushing our organs out of the way so that we can take a full breath and then relaxes, helps to activate our parasympathetic sympathetic nervous system. I don't have any science to back this up. I have not done research and I have not come across research that backs that up, but that works so fast to calm your mind and your body, that breathing, I think the diaphragm, I suspect it plays a role in that.
So, as a biology professor,
Oh, thank you.
let
I
me
love
explain
I
to
love
some-
talking to experts about stuff that I just make stuff
So,
up about.
what's happening when you inhale deeply is you create negative pressure, which pulls blood towards your heart. And then the next heartbeat, you get more blood to the brain. So, you're actually getting oxygen to your brain, and that helps your brain work better. So, yes, it's not the diaphragm, but the
Okay.
extra blood you're sucking up that's stuck in your legs gets sucked up and then goes to your brain. So,
Turns out,
yeah. Correct. And I spend like 3 weeks in my fall physiology class explaining how that all works. So I don't want to get into the details, but yes, you're basically pumping your venous blood close to your heart and you get extra brain involvement, extra blood supply to your brain. And then when I teach my endocrinology class, I do like 3 weeks on stress hormones, cortisol. And then apparently lecture 15 is very insightful to my students because we kind of talk about some of these things, but how to harness your physiology to deal with stress. And one of the things that I've noticed, a lot of these things, you put students as victims. Things are happening to you,
right.
and you have to reframe. I've found reframe it to not bad things are happening to you, but life is throwing you curveballs. You're not the victim. It's just life is happening around you. And then how are you going to respond to curveballs? As opposed to how are you going to respond to a stress event or bad things happening to you? So if you tell them it's bad, that already gets you a different mindset. But if you tell them it's just life and curveballs happen, it's a whole different mindset. So that goes with the embrace a growth mindset, that first one that you have in there. So not using words like, oh, this is stressful, this is hard, this is difficult, just like, hey, this is our next thing we're going to do, and not this is something hard that we're going to do. Like just changing the words a little bit makes a huge difference. And then it's like, hey, this is a puzzle we're going to do, as opposed to we're getting ready for a quiz. That freaks them out, but you're like, hey, let's do a puzzle. Just change. That's that growth mindset. So that's just the examples that I use in my class. And then I give them the whole physiology for, okay, now that it's a curveball and now that you know that you have the ability to solve this puzzle, you're going to make a plan, right? Which is your problem solving.
Yes.
Then you're going to organize, build supportive relationship, set goals, and then you're going to do it. And that just calms you right down. So it's just framing it in that positive way and not the victimhood way, which drives me crazy because a lot of the words that you've used so far puts them as victims. And I don't like that at all. So I would recommend, from my biology perspective, flipping it into, instead of you're a victim and life happens to you, is you're living life and life is happening around you. And how do you plan, organize, and do?
Right.
And then the other one that I love with this emotional intelligence and supportive relationships is so true. I always tell them, if you think you have it bad, you're going to find someone who has it worse than you. find whoever's worse off than you and help them, because that makes you feel better and it helps them, and it's just a win-win situation. So my students that like do the ALEC tutoring, they're always like, oh my God, I have so little time. And then they do the tutoring and then they feel so much better because they've helped someone else, that emotional intelligence, and then the supportive relationships. So I love that you have all these on there. All right, so now I've hogged everything. Do you all have other methods that you all use for these, how to teach these things? She's like, no, I don't want to talk. But
So-
does anyone else have any good methods to teach some of this stuff? Because I'd love to hear things. So I love how you begin your class with like the breathing exercise, and then so I begin every class with there is a closed book assessment that I do about halfway or 3/4 of the way the semester, and it's just a quiz, a puzzle, and a medical concept. I won't go into all the details. And I usually start that like the third or fourth lecture, we start talking about this because they always worry about assessments, right? They're always freaked out. What's my grade gonna be? What's my grade gonna be? So I always start out that way. And then the beginning of every class, I'm like, okay, 5 minutes. Here's a new puzzle. Let's work through this new puzzle. And so that directs them, focuses them, like you said, play the music to get them all focused, give them a puzzle, give them something to get them all focused. And then they're all there and they're ready to go. That presence that you talked about. So that's what I do. What do you all guys do?
I usually do music. I think that music is such a great way to connect with students. So that's a great way to also build rapport with the students. So I tend to, like, the very first students to come to class, I ask them like the type of music they've been listening to, or if they have their buds on. It's like, what are you listening to right now? And that's what I put on for us to listen. So as they're coming in, we have conversations about music, and I'm connecting to them about music, and we can take a deep breath at the end of the song before we start. But the whole thing about mindfulness, I always make a joke that mindfulness is about making sure that your soul is back into your body.
Right.
Because a lot of the times you might see the student and the body's there, but the soul is elsewhere. So we just need to reconnect the soul and the body so that they're present and on task and paying attention. And in particular with laptops, it is so easy for the students to be elsewhere mentally. I do a lot of teaching observations, and I can tell you that, I haven't done a study, but like I see that people are not on task if I'm doing it.
They're shopping.
Observation. Yeah, they're shopping, they're streaming, they're doing everything but class stuff. So yeah, so when you sometimes we
Sorry, Addie, what do you recommend for helping students not online shop and not do all that kind of stuff? What is your recommendation?
active learning strategies, actually, if you're going to have technology, to actually use technology for an activity or something, like to be on task, not just to, it's okay for note taking, but you can also provide a handout for the students so they don't need to take notes, or just, a handout with the bullet points. They don't have to be taking notes all the time. So if you're going to have the technology, to do it for an activity, be intentional.
Right.
So
What about like attendance? What do you think about like requiring attendance versus letting them figure out their own attendance policies? Because then if you require attendance and they don't want to be there, they're going to do more of that online shopping, and then I feel like that spreads like a wave.
yeah, you could have work on the assessment strategy to maybe in class activities be more than the class, for the class assessment. So then it's an extrinsic motivator to get people to actually engage with the class content. So yeah, back to you, Jen.
Oh, there we go.
Turns out there's more. So but that's okay. So I was painting a rather negative victim related picture at the beginning, but there's a flip side, right? So there's a study that was conducted by Pennebaker and some colleagues that indicated that individuals who engaged in therapeutic writing experienced more well-being and happiness months later And so one of the things that we do as humans is we tell ourselves stories, right? So we tell ourselves that these things are happening to me and I cannot control what is going on in the world. Um, and we can adjust our paradigms by recreating these narratives. And so it's important to think about what are the stories that we're telling ourselves. Um, and so I would like to invite you to think about an example in your teaching where you continue to repeat a story that produces worry or anxiety. And then try writing out a new version with a more positive interpretation, and then think about how you feel as you're reinterpreting that, you're writing that new story. And then my next ask is then consider an example of when your students are feeling worry and anxiety. And how can you retell the story of worry or anxiety for your students? And so one of the ways that I did this was, so I came up with this great idea to have the midterm exam for a class be a sight reading challenge, because one of the competencies for being a music therapist is to be able to sight read, which means that you are given a piece of music, you look at it for a few minutes and you perform it, right? That's what sight reading is. It's really challenging. I don't know if you've ever had to do that, but
Gives me anxiety just thinking
it
about
gives
it.
me anxiety too. And yet it's stuff that we ask our students to do. I had to do it. It was terrible. And so um I made this the midterm exam, and this is not, I'm not telling great stories about myself, but Addie's gonna give me a list of suggestions for improving. No, so my the way my grades are set up currently is that midterms and finals are 40% of the grade, and other assignments are different weights. And so we did the sight reading challenge, and I gave them a bunch of tips on how to practice for it, because how do you practice for sight reading? It's really hard to do, but you have to like build some mental constructs. And plus, at the end of this year or this semester, these particular students, this group of students have to pass an upper division review in order to continue on in the major. And it's based on a bunch of different things, but one of the major components is performance on being able to accompany yourself with piano and while you're singing, and to be able to accompany yourself on guitar while you're singing. All right. And so we have them do this exam, and they pick a song for each instrument. They play those songs. We ask them to transpose it into a different key on the spot, and then play it again. And then we give them a song to sight read for both piano and guitar, like at two separate songs. And then they have to transpose that too. Right. So it's a tough exam, and they have to pass it in order to continue being a music therapist. And I wanted to provide some way for them to have that and experience sight reading for some sort of stakes before that one. Just because what I notice is that students don't know how to practice sight reading, and it's because they don't do it. And because why would you do it? Because if I'm practicing, I'm gonna like figure out what the notes are and get it right. You don't have time to do that when you're sight reading. And so I came up with this exam, and I gave it on Monday, and they did not do well. But part of the exam was having them write a reflection. So they would perform the piece, they'd have a minute to look at it, they would perform the piece, we would all clap for them no matter how they did. And then they would do the same song on guitar, which is different from the upper division review. It would be separate songs, but for this one, it was the same song. And then they'd perform the piece and we would clap. And then they would return to their seat and have 1 minute to write a reflection about their skills and what they did and how that went for them, and identify some things that they needed to do differently going forward. So they did that. Some of them did better on the reflection than others, and most of it was admission of I did not know how to practice this, and so I did not practice it very well, and now I know I need to do these things to practice it better. And it really tanked their grades, and I don't feel like it was reflective of their work as students in this class. So I said, I'm going to experiment. I'm going to move this midterm into one of the assignment groups that is 10% of the grade and see how that goes. And so I just moved that assignment and hit refresh and looked at the grades, and their grades improved quite a lot. And I said, you have the opportunity to retake this exam by scheduling an appointment with me. And it has to be done by the end of the week after spring break. And so the class that I teach is 2 hours long. And the exam was done in the first hour. And I said, if you want to retake it now, you have that opportunity. And 2 students did that. And one had a better grade. The other one did not have a better grade. And so I said, I'm not going to make your grade lower than what you got the first time, but I'm not going to do that to you. And so the others are going to retake the exam later, and they're all still making a grade that I think matches what their effort and abilities are in that class more closely than it would have if I had left that grade in the 40% one. So I might need to rethink my assignment weights, but I inherited those, and I'm a clinician. I'm a music therapist, not an educator. I don't have any pedagogy knowledge. And so I'm still trying to figure all this stuff out. And I do that by experimenting. So I should probably consult with Addie and more. But who has time for that? No, I will make time for that. Okay, so that would one of the things that I did in that whole exercise was try to reframe the experience of what sight reading is for them and what the experience is going to be like at the end of the semester for them. And I let them know in the comments as I was giving them grades, I said, this would pass the upper division because to pass it, you just have to do 70% or better, right? We don't expect perfect. And so some of them would pass with what they demonstrated there. Some of them would not. And so I let them know that what would happen is you would be asked to meet with the professors another time and retake that portion of the exam of the upper division review. So we give them lots of opportunities to recover from failure. And I let them know that it's okay to need to recover from failure. And I try to build in those opportunities a lot. And I think that the stories that a lot of students are told as they're going through high school, particularly K through 12, is failure is not an option. But failure is essential because we don't learn if we don't fail. So helping, that's one way that I help reframe that story or help students retell the story about what failure is and what bad grades are, and that there is a way to recover from a bad grade or a failing grade. Okay. So another thing that's really important for resilience in managing stress is finding your purpose. So if we find meaning in our environment, then we have a stronger sense of well-being and we think better. And there was a study done with some folks in Okinawa about the concept of, I'm gonna mispronounce this. Are there any Okinawans in the audience? Because I know there's biologists in the audience. Okay, I'm still gonna find some connection to the diaphragm and the parasympathetic nervous system. That's on my long-term list of things to do.
Blood. It's the blood.
I believe
Sure.
you, but also this other thing can also be true.
Not disagreeing with that.
But probably for now, the blood is more effective. Yes, I get that. I told you it's an unscientific.
Whatever works, you know.
100%. Okay, so the ikigai, I think, is how it is pronounced. So it's Ikigai, ikigai, and it's the Okinawan word for the the concept that means reason for being or reason for waking up in the morning. And there's a handout that is available to you via email from Addie. It's a PDF of all of this packet, because the packet, like the stuff in the packet is useful, but it's not something I wanted to work with in this group today. But the front page of the packet is the image of the Ikigai, and it's a worksheet that's related to finding your purpose. And so the Ikigai is in the center of this Venn diagram, where we have a what do I love circle and a what does the world need circle. I don't know if I'm on camera. I can't see myself. The what I get paid to do circle, and the what I am good at circle. And where they intersect, like the what am I good at and what I get paid to do is your profession. What the world needs and what you get paid to do is your vocation. What I love and what the world needs is your mission. What I love and what I'm good at is your passion. And where they all intersect is your reason for waking up in the morning, your purpose. There's a PDF that Addie has that she'll email to all of the participants. I thought so too. So I wanted to point it out to you. And I thought, so there's a whole worksheet that you can go through to find your passion and do that. There's a purpose checkup. So you can answer, take a little quiz, like a Vogue quiz and or Cosmo quiz. And just take a look at your check at where you feel you are. And you can do that kind of regularly. Like the person that created this was Richard Leader. And he suggests that you do that like every year on your birthday, perhaps. Just kind of doing a check-in on your purpose. And then there's a whole bunch of other documents that sort of explain that, because I didn't want to cannibalize the handout that he had made available. So that's all there and present for you. Yes. That would be a great exercise for what? For a meeting. Oh. Wouldn't that be great? I agree that it would be really helpful for faculty and some team building. Program assessment. Okay, and so a lot of the complaints that I hear from students about, especially classes that don't align perfectly with their major, right? Or that they think don't align perfectly with their major. Like I still don't feel like I use algebra very much, but other people that know algebra tell me that I do use it. I just don't call it that. So I don't know. I'm gonna study that later, maybe, probably not. The diaphragm thing, yes, but not the algebra. But I think that it would help the students to understand what is the purpose of taking a language. What's the when that's not their major field of study? What's the purpose of taking I don't know what the other requirements are. I only know what I teach. But what's the purpose of taking a religion class when I'm not religious and I don't really care about religion or whatever else is necessary? And I think it's easy to think that way. I mean, I know I thought that way when I was an undergraduate student, especially about algebra, but also about some other classes. Like, why do I have to take all these ensembles when I'm not going to be a performer? But they actually help us grow and develop as a person. And it turns out if you're growing and developing as a person, that you're going to be better at what you do, even if it is in a lab, not talking to other people.
Just a comment from Zoom that John said that he uses the concept from the handout in the systems engineering planning management class, and it applies to development team, not just an individual too.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yes. Because it turns out when you're on a team, you're working with humans, and we do better when we know what our purpose is. Yeah. Okay. And so these are the questions that I shifted about the purpose exercises to be about our teaching and about helping our get the perspective of our students. And so so that I don't have to listen to them complain about why am I having to take, I don't know, biology. Like I feel like you're working with people. You need to know biology. But uh if if we can all like say this is why we're learning what we're learning and make sure that that's really evident, because it just isn't. I always think they're going to know why I'm teaching them the stuff about music therapy, and it's because they're going to do it, but they don't make that connection because they haven't been there yet. And so helping make that connection can help them be more resilient in class and help their stress levels decline. Okay, I think I have 8 minutes. Yeah. Um, okay, I'm gonna skip to the more interesting things because I have more activities. And I feel like Addie also sends out the slides of the recording afterwards, so you can read these. I feel like you know some of these things too. But I wanted to get some tips from actual students. And so I asked some of my students on a day when everybody was really stressed out and I was worried about teaching this class this week because I don't feel very resilient right now. Even though I know that I am modeling resilience by continuing to show up and do these things. I know that, but I also have therapy on Tuesdays in the morning and I don't feel resilient in therapy until much later, right? So they expressed a lot of anxiety on that particular class day and were in a complaining mood. And I said, I'm giving this talk on helping reduce student stress and build resilience in classrooms. And so I said, what do your teachers do that help you build resilience? And it turned into a bit of a complaining fest. And then I had to shut it. I took these notes and then I had to shut it down and we did the breathing and listening to music exercise to bring us back on target that day. But they said that they needed professors who understand when they need time extensions for assignments, help them feel more resilient and reduce their stress. There's one student said that she had a professor that assigns readings and reflections, and at the end of the reflection, the question that she asked students is to include how long they took on the reading so that she can adjust the workload accordingly. And so understanding some of that might be useful. Um, they said be aware of the workload and be realistic, and this is where the complaint fest started. They complained about every class they have has a massive workload, and they appreciate honesty of the professor and openness and communication and feeling like they can talk to you. Some of them said they wouldn't reach out to teachers because they were too overwhelmed and scared to reach out after they got behind. So it's like a self-perpetuating thing. Like I'm getting behind and I don't know what to do and I'm too scared to talk. And so now I'm paralyzed and can't do work to get on behind. Let's see, some of them said, a lot of it was about, I don't understand why we have to take this class or that class or this class. One student said, I literally go to class until 3 every day, and then I go straight to work and get home at 10, and I do homework for 3 hours, and I get up at 8 and do it again. So I counted up the number of hours that she was sleeping. It's about 4 to 5, and which I don't think is enough. I couldn't, I mean, I did when I was 20, but I can't survive on 4 or 5 hours of sleep now. And I don't think I did very well when I was 20. I was a mess just like they are. And then one student was really complaining about the 2 semesters of language and having 6 hours of homework every single night for these language classes. And when I'm not going to speak French, I'm going to be a music therapist. So, so, and then I had them regroup and come back to something positive. And they said that teachers that check in on them and have check-ins are very helpful. So like, how are we doing today? Because I have a small class size. I teach 5 students at a time and not 50 students. So I don't know how well this would work with a larger class, but when I come in and I see them, they're all over the place spiritually and physically and mentally. I just say, how are things going? Or if I also do that when I notice that I'm having trouble on that particular day. How are you guys doing? I am struggling. How are you doing? And so that I did that, like I came from uh my son is just having a lot of challenges. And I came from dealing with that to class, and my son was in the other room because he couldn't be at home or at school that day. And so they know this. And so I said, so I'm really having a lot of challenges. How are you doing? And I know that I'm not doing well. And it sounds like from what you're saying, you're not doing well. So, but we still need to cover this material. That's what we're here to do. And I want you to be great music therapists when you graduate. And let's just give each other grace and understand when we can't find the right words or our thoughts escape us and do that. And so those are the kind of check-ins that I try to do and the way that I try to model.
So I was going to say, I give students 2 grace cards at the beginning of the semester for that exact reason. Because then they get all stressed out and then they get behind and they don't do well on something. I'm like, hand in a grace card. And if they don't need to use a grace card, they can bump their grade at the end of the semester. So having that relief valve is so important to them.
And
Yeah.
see, I don't feel like I can do that because
The virtual grace card. Yeah.
right.
I don't
I don't feel like I can do that because I teach them to be music therapists. I only see them once a week for the material that I'm teaching. And so it's 16 weeks and in those 16 weeks I have to teach them everything they need to know. And so I have really stringent attendance policies, but then when they come to me and, I also don't want them coming to class sick and making me sick. And so I do extend grace and I don't actually follow the policies that are written the way they are most of the time.
So to ask your, so the grace card, they, like I said, they get 2 at the beginning of the semester, and I do multiple lower stakes assessments, and I also use specs grading, but for the lower stake assessments, not like the 20%, most of mine are like equivalent to about 10% of their course grade or so. If they don't do well on an assessment, they can hand me a grace card. They have to do the assessment 100% correct. So no errors at all. They can resubmit that assessment and I take a grace card and then they get that higher grade. So it gives an opportunity to learn to see how you're supposed to do it correctly. And then they hand in that grace card. And if they save to the end of the semester, they can get a third of a grade. So if they had a B, they can get a B plus. Or if they had 2 grace cards, they can go from a B to a B plus to an A minus using 2 grace cards. So there's a lot of like gamesmanships, but they feel like they're in control. It's part of that. Make your plan and be in control as opposed to being the victim. And my students absolutely love it. And having that ability, and only give them 2, and they like negotiate for more, and you're like, no, you get 2. But I have throughout the semester, there are 14 weeks in the semester, and I have 12 basically once a week low stake assessments that they can use them on. Sort of the short version of that. So if you have low stakes assessment, that works really, really well.
Get out of jail free.
Get out of jail free card. I call it the grace card. Yeah.
Somebody is Zoom, Kelly, she said that she gives them forgiveness passes. So I'm pretty sure it's similar concept. When it comes to the estimate and the students knowing how much work there is, just so you know, like when you look at the Carnegie credit hour, the amount of work that a student should be doing in the class, basically you can think about the amount of time that you spend in class, you double that amount for outside of class. That's how much you should be doing. So there's a wonderful workload calculator that was originally done at Rice University, and I'm pasting this for the folks in Zoom, but I'll send you guys later. It's going to be when we send the recording, it will be in the YouTube description. But there's a workload calculator that was done by Rice and is available at Wake Forest. They can put in readings that you're asking them to do. It estimates how long it would take for people to complete based on research on how people read, like the speed in which people read. So I usually do the estimation that overestimate how long it's going to take, but then you can have an idea of how much work you're asking your students to do, and don't go over what would be that allotted time that you are, quote unquote, allowed by law. But, a lot of people just, some faculty require more, some people do less. But if you want to meet the standards, it would be doubling the amount of time they spend in class with them to do work outside of class spread out throughout the week.
1 hour.
If you're meeting them face to face, it would be 2 hours outside of class. And then the 2 hours in class would be count anything that they would have to do for your class. So anything that they would be thinking, any cognitive effort they would put towards your class, calculate in the estimator, and try to cut it off on those times, so that, and you explain to them that you've done that, and those asking the students
Yeah.
reporting back is really helpful, because you do estimations, right? But having the students report back is good, because then you can calculate the estimations, and as you teach the course multiple semesters, and make it more accurate.
So I'm out of time. I just wanted to end with, you can't give more than you have to give. And so I, with my therapist, put together this. I came to her desperately one day and I said, I need some solutions. I need to fix this. I need to reduce my stress radically. And so we came up with I called it, this is my own personal plan. I called it my radical stress reduction plan. And it's a checklist, and they're research based. The journaling is the writing, your feelings thing, right? Calling a friend, because we know social is important. Bringing order and beauty into my environment. That can be, just something small, like picking up the laundry off the floor and putting it in the basket, something small. I clean the classroom that I teach in too, because I don't think other people do. Um, so I try to do that in my classroom as well. So this noticing tight muscles and rating it, I have a lot of tension in my shoulders and in my jaw in particular during this time. And she said, rate it, your tension on a scale of 1 to 10. Right now, I'm at about a 4. And then she said, identify the story I'm telling myself, even if it doesn't make sense. And a lot of times my story around my jaw is that I'm trying to not say the mean things that I'm thinking in my head. Right. And so I just make a note of that. I have not processed that yet. So one day I'm going to take my notes and bring that to therapy, but I haven't gotten there yet. Oh, and then playing a flute, which I have a way, if you would like to try this out, I have a way that you can do this in a sanitary way, if you're here. But it's based on a Native American style of flute. And you have 2 holes to cover with your top hand and 3 holes to cover with your bottom hand. And you just blow air through it. And the authentic way to play it is you only lift or lower one finger next. Like you don't skip fingers. Okay. And so when you play it, it sounds like this. Here's some feedback. So thank you. Thank you. But I know, and it sounds amazing. And so that's why I wanted to bring a way for you to try it, because it's really not, it's a flute. I believe it's called a Native American flute. I hate using that term because I don't want to appropriate cultures that aren't mine, but that's how it's styled and that's how it was sold to me. And it is very simple to play. You don't have to have a whole lot of musical knowledge to play that. And so I brought ways for you to try it out if you want to try that out. But what it does is it causes you to take a nice deep breath and to blow it out in an extended way, which slows down your heart rate, sends more oxygen through the blood up into your brain, also stretches out your diaphragm and probably does something there too. But that's not scientifically proven. Okay. So anyway, I just wanted to share that. And then there's also resources for you to look at on your own. Thank you. It's not. I mean, I didn't learn anything. I'm just blowing into it. So this,
Better than 59th Street Bridge.
it is,
Plus it's
Okay.
Something about live music.
well, yeah. Yes, and the vibrations that you feel. So this is medical tubing that I just snipped, and I have to use this other part of the medical tubing as an attachment, which is not, it's not real secure, so it comes apart really easily, but otherwise it falls all the way through, and that doesn't do anything. And so if you would like to try it out, so I'll show you how it works with the mouthpiece. Right, this is not an official musical mouthpiece, but I can throw these away. Since more infection control, it gives you the opportunity to at least try it out, but it does come apart really easily, so you don't want to like put any pressure on it, and you kind of have to hold it there. Here. All right, so 2 fingers on the top, 3 fingers on the bottom, and you just lift one at a time and you lower. They have to be in order, right? So you're not gonna skip. Okay, and so. So it comes apart, but you can just kind of get it back. And it still does it. So if you would like to try it, I have plenty of disposable objects. Read The Anxious Generation, all that book. No.
So the question was about the book, The Anxious Generation. It's a must read for anyone teaching. Addie, we should do that next year for the CTE reading. It's really helps explain why our kiddos are so anxious right now. It's super great.
Well, I also think that we as a society have not fully recovered from COVID.
Which is part of this book. That's exactly
global
right.
pandemic.
Yeah. I think that's
And we keep
Mhm.
trying to think that, yes, we have, and because we're past it, right? We're not having to isolate our mask all the time.
Mm.
We have not recovered from that global pandemic, and it affected every single person on this planet. And we've not figured out how to get past that and recover from it.
Yeah. The lack of human interconnectivity is kind of one of the key takeaways from that,
Mhm.
which is why I love saying call a friend every day, right? Get
Mhm.
that back. So anyway,
Oh, thank you so much. Was great, and I'm very passionate about this topic, and I can say a million things, but I just want to say one thing that I learned recently. I was in the airplane and I took a master class. Oh, I saw instead of a movie, a master class called the happiness equation. And he said something that I was very surprised about. And when we are little kids, we tell our moms or parents, oh, share. And they're like, yeah, share. And they were like, table. Yes, table. Oh, so we start describing the world around us. And we repeat the words and we tell our parents. And there's a research that shows by MIT or something that never stops. That never stops. That storytelling actually not only like in our minds, yeah, it's true, we tell our stories about the world and people all the time, but what I was so fascinated about is that our vocal cords move. They don't stop moving. We just don't say, oh, Janice, oh, professors, oh, I am at SMU, but oh, I feel so bad right now. But our vocal cords are moving because we're still telling stories, and physically we're telling stories too. And they did a test, an experiment that shows that, yeah, we tell stories all the time about everything.
Mhm.
We do our physical bodies. So I just want to share that I found it really fascinating. Yeah.
Mhm.
The importance of changing the story.
But
Like 2 notes. Give me one.
But see, it's easy to make it sound good, and that was the point. I wanted you to know that it's not, I don't have great Indian or American, Native American flute talent. I can, I can take a breath and blow and lift up one finger and lower one finger in order.
Such a comfort.
It is. Yes, that's the point. You don't have to know anything to play it.
Why you have to play it like that, like the way you?
That was the authentic way that it was originally intended to be played. That's what I was told when I was sold. Well, actually, my parents bought that flute for me. But when I talked to the woman who had made that, she explained that if you're playing it authentically, you're just lifting one finger, you're only playing notes that are next to each other. You're not doing skips. Now, I have also played, I've used it to play Wayfaring Stranger, right? I am a poor wayfaring stranger. Uh, which has skips in it. So I have played it in a Western style of music, and it works just fine for that. And she even, there's a leather wrap, yeah, covering up a third hole for the top hand, so that I could play it chromatically if I wanted to. It's in an A minor key, if that matters. But right now with the 5 holes, it's a pentatonic scale. And the pentatonic scale does not have, there's no clashing intervals in the pentatonic scale. So every note that you play sounds good with the note that you play before or after it. With that. So it's set up for success. Uh-huh. Anybody else want to try it? Yeah. Trying to look for the clues, send it to people. Yeah. I'll look it up and see if the person that I bought that from is still making them, and I'll send you that link.
It also looks beautiful. Yeah, like it's aesthetically really pretty. You can find it under Stellar Flutes, it's $300 flute. Wow, you're a beginner? For a beginner will be a.
I don't know that they paid. Yeah.
Yeah, I went to the website. Okay.
Yeah, Janalia Hoffman. Yeah.
The website.
Yes, you need to send this QA.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.